Benchekri. Bonjour Aurélie. Alors Aurélie, vous êtes doctorante.
So Aurélie, you are a doctoral student at the you are a doctor. So congratulations. So Aurélie, you are going to tell us about fine motricity and overall motricity in children with autism. And this relates to challenges of early detection. So we can think about, is the motor dimension something that we shouldn't look into for? Thank you. So hello to all. Let us start on a presentation. This is no longer behavior related, but there is a notion of phenotyping and clustering. So first, let me thank Arapi for giving me the opportunity to present the results of my dissertation, and I defended my thesis in June. I was studying fine motricity and global or overall motricity in children with autism. And now I'm going to introduce part of the results of this dissertation on the disorders of motor anticipation. So I was directed by Christelle Bidé-Videi. Currently, the ASD diagnosis, these motricity disorders have been known for a long time, since Leo Kanner mentioned already that several children were presenting, difficulty walking or overall motricity. And several authors for some time now have decided that they would consider as cardinal aspects fine motricity. The anomalies of motricity, fine motricity, that require the small muscles of hand and fingers, drawing, writing, but also global motricity that is involving all of the body. And several nature's tasks have been proposed. But how can you explain motor disorders in ASD? Some explanations have been proposed in literature. Some dysfunctions that will involve certain areas of the brain, and some will postulate that it can be actually consecutive to anomalies of sensory anomalies. And some will postulate that it is related to anticipation, that is, preparation of the gesture. When we talk about anticipation, what is it? In terms of electrophysiology, we talk about anticipation with desynchronization, physiological. There is a diminution or reduction of power or the strength about a few seconds before the beginning of the movement. And the desynchronization will actually come before the voluntary movement. We can also talk about planification in the executive, everything that is made possible with activations or preparation in the prefrontal. And then actions that are necessary for the performance of a unique action, and that is supported by the parietal areas. For each stage, I will present the result of several studies that were with DLE, desynchronizations related to the event. So the children were, for instance, asked to carry a load on the left arm and take it with the other arm, keeping the elbow at 90 degrees. And these studies were conducted between Marseille and Toulouse, and what was observed was the fine line that represents this action, anticipation of the action, the DLE, which is present in the typical children. It becomes thicker in the population of autistic children. And this anticipation of the voluntary movement is also visible in peripheric. So, the authors have observed that that before the task of removing the load from the arm, so in terms of the executive planning of the gesture, we used a lot of systems. The reaction time, for instance, for some. So here is comfortable getting the object and put it in the circle with a comfortable gesture. In this study, they looked at the percentage of success, and this percentage of success is lower in the ASD group with more uncomfortable positions compared to a population of language disorders or a neurotypical population. And in terms of programming, and the internal organization of the motor, so the two movements, one after the other. So the difficulty of the second part will influence the performance of the first part. So here we see a visual. The task was to lift an object of the same size and put it in a space that could be small or big or small. In the first part of the movement and the duration of the first part would be influenced by the difficulty of the second part of the task. And in typical children that you have on the left, you have a performance time and lengthening of the time when the object was to be put on a smaller surface. And children with ASD, what was observed was an increase of the duration only for the second part of the movement, which was the putting, but there was no difference in the first part of the movement in the performance of this gesture. So it seems that children with an ASD will program motor sequences independently from each other. So the sequences of anticipation, planning, and programming of gesture, we have a good literature, but on the overall, we cannot isolate one process specifically. We have isolated studies. We can test a type of motricity, very fine or very global, separately. So it seems that in literature specific to motor dysfunctions in ASD, we need integrative analysis that enable us to analyze these several steps to see how they will feed into fine motricity and global motricity in children. So the idea is to identify systems that will explain the anomalies of motor function in ASD that is common to fine and global motricity. And our hypothesis is that this common system or mechanism is located within the preparation stage. So let me present the general methodology, and then I will go back to each motricity task. My doctoral research was part of a multi-center study that involved several laboratories and was also a clinical study involving these different areas geographically. So we had an assessment protocol, which we called PEME, where we had 4 tasks of fine motricity, tasks related to balance and movement. And from view, when looking at the difficulties of preparation, we're going to just focus on writing and initiation of walk. So first, anticipation for writing. It was a sequence-based task, so we asked each child to write LL and LN 10 times. And for the walk initiation, we use this because in this task, we have to adjust the posture, anticipate the adjustment. So we asked them to start 5 initiations of walking, with taking into account some drawings on the floor that you see. We were able to analyze. We had 55 children with ASD and 59 autistic children, aged between we had ADOS scores or ADIR, no intellectual deficiency. So we had WISC 5 and then we also asked the parents to fill out 4 questionnaires regarding the severity of the autistic disorder, the Q-tag to have an idea of the motor function of every day, the Conner Cerebris to have an idea of their executive attention. The children who passed the anticipation task for writing and initiating walk was about half. So about 27 children with ASD and about 30 neurotypical, about the same number of girls in each group. So the common methodology. One of the peculiarities was that we didn't average the 10 testing tests. We extracted the most representative test, and this technique enables us to use a production that is really the child's production, because we have a very large variety of production. If we were using an average, that would sort of flatten out these differences. So you see that this is the thickest line is the one that is. The interpreter does not really catch what you were saying there. Sorry. So we had statistical analysis of the difference between each type of task, and we wanted to reach this phenotyping and clustering, and we did an analysis of the main components. In terms of fine motricity, fine motor skills, we had a graphic tablet with a stylet, a computer to direct the tasks, and the Iron Paint 3 to represent the stimuli and collect the data. So the writing anticipation, the constraints are integrated in the first part of the move. So we're expecting an increase of the time for the first L, that took into account influencing the difficulty of the second letter. So in 2014, we were proposing the dissociation of the upstroke with the downstroke. Actually, they proposed three diagrams, LL, LE, LN, and the upstroke increases with, it's faster to get two L's, and the duration of the writing increases with the difficulty related to the second letter. So we were evaluating the length, the speed, and the fluidity, and we dissociated downstroke and upstroke with the duration and the maximum speed, and we had ANOVAs with repeated measures. We had to transform the data, and so these are transformed data. The values along these lines do not represent the exact results. So the results here were the group of ASD children, which do not respect what we have found in literature. The duration of the downstroke is not necessarily longer for LN as for LL. So here the results for fluidity, duration of the upstroke and the downstroke. It means that these groups of children, we could suspect that they will do, we can suspect that they have not automated the writing gesture. And in the group of children of autism and the neurotypical. So the ones who really slow down on the downstroke, you can see a difference on the downstroke. The children with ASD are in the upper, they are slow to write all parts of the movement. And the duration of the downstroke is longer for LN than for LL. And we have an interaction of a group per letters. So children with TSA are slow. They really write, takes slower for the writing their LN. So the children of ASD are able to anticipate, but they do it differently. So we can wonder if the anticipation and the slowing down is not taking place already when they do the upstroke. And the walking. So this is the type of analysis or visual on which I was able to work on during my doctoral research. So the task of overall motricity, you have two mats, and all the movements were recorded with electronic cameras. We had markers that were sending light rays to the electronic cameras. So initiation of walk that requires anticipation of posture, and then muscular activation that precede the voluntary movement. So during the APA, upon initiation of the walking, so the center of pressure is the place where you put the pressure on the ground. When we have, there is a moment of imbalance, which does not mean instability, but it's seeking the balance to initiate the step. So you have another representation from above. So you have an amplitude of the force of The movements of the pressure center enabled us to identify 3 moments. The APA onset, which is the beginning, and the beginning of unloading, where the move is maximal on the lateral side, and this corresponds to a moment when amplitude of the force is maximal, and the foot off, which corresponds to the moment when the swing foot, which starts with the right leg or right foot starts. We have identified 2 phases, which were the loading phase with mediolateral and anterior, and the unloading phase, which enables the raising of the foot. But we were able to understand where the pressure center was. Some authors proposed to calculate projection towards the, so it's what we call the extrapolated center of force. Initiation of walk is a dynamic. So we proposed the concept of stabilization or stability margin, which is a function between COP and CON, but we decided to calculate the moment when there's the maximum instability, and we calculated So in terms of the variables, we analyzed the difference between the 2 groups in terms of the duration, and we distinguished between the loading and unloading phase. For the loading phase, we studied the normalized amplitude and the maximal speed achieved, and during the unloading phase, where all the movements will happen on the mediolateral side. So the maximum speed on mediolateral only, and the margin of stability, which was calculated based on the 2 axes. The distribution of the data was in terms of the results, we see that children with ASD, which are represented in blue, we see a duration of the APA, which they are slower, take longer, and there is a significant difference between the 2 groups during the phase of unloading. When you look at the loading phase, we see that this slowed down speed, we have 0.08 with an amplitude which is less. And in the unloading phase, we see this maximum speed of moving, which is less with children with autism. And in the end, when upon the foot lifting phase, so this does not really show in a striking way, but so this results in terms of global maturity. The children with ASD are slower to initiate walk, and the speed of walking is less also, and that is accounted for by first an amplitude of walk, which is shorter in the loading phase, which implies that the unloading phase will be slower because they will need more time to lift in this case, the right foot, which explains why when you measure the So we tried to put together our data for fine motor skills and the global motor skills or overall motor skills. And our analysis enabled us to have 3 clusters that share clinical and motor skills that we can put together. Cluster 1, we have a mix of 50-50 of children neurotypical and ASD. And cluster 2, we have more ASD, and cluster 3, more neurotypical. So for the group of cluster 1 first. So cluster 1, 50-50. The idea was to see if there were profiles of children who would have a fine motor skills and overall motor skills that are impacted at the same time. So here we have 50-50, and the variables of so speed or the amplitude of movement, that is. So cluster 1 will have. So let me on overall motricity. So this group requires less movement of the anterior posterior. So in the ASD group, we have a global score which is higher than it's the overall motor skills. They have a loading time that is faster, and unloading time which is slower, and their axis of stability which is lower also. So they have they use less this biomechanic system to initiate their step. And the third cluster, which is more with neurotypical children, and they have fine motor skills and overall motor skills that function more normally. And their their overall speed is higher than for the 2 other clusters, and they have better scores than the 2 other clusters. In the 2 motricity tasks, we see that ASD and typical children have different types, are different. So clusters seem to exist with difficulty that involved fine motor skills and overall motor skills, but without assuming which step of planning or programming of the task. The data point towards some maybe anomalies in terms of the motor preparation. But we cannot really say exactly where, but it impacts fine motor skills and overall motor skills. But still, it's not exactly the same type of, because with fine motor skills, the objective is to ensure speed and precision. And in overall, it's preparing the whole movement, and so the idea is to preserve the whole system in order not to fall. And these the limits of these analysis, and we discussed this in the presentations before, but we didn't take into account the co-occurrences of other neurodevelopmental disorders that the children could present before. I am not sure that the results that I am presenting today are pathognomonic. We didn't take into account the duration of the motor re-education or motor rehabilitation that we included in the study. We also considered the ASD group as an homogeneous group, whereas it is a spectrum. So we need to take that into account in our analysis, but how to. And also the data in terms of fine motor skills, for pragmatic consideration, we collected everything and then we put aside some children. So whereas if we had done that beforehand, we could have collected maybe better data. So there was quite a loss of data. The impossibility for the children to carry out the tasks that we were asking, and that these tasks required the children to really remain immobile for a time that made it impossible for children with autism. So the idea was to identify a common mechanism to these dysfunctions in fine motor skills and overall motor skills with children with ASD. And the idea with this a multicentric study is to identify tasks that could be discriminating and that could be used in a diagnostic approach. So here a picture of the people involved in the lab. Thank you for your attention. Are there questions? No, please. Hello. I really like your work. It is very, very interesting. Understanding that motor skills was one of the areas that have been really overlooked in view of autism. So this is one additional reason to like this work. I recognize the names of the people that you quoted, and this is really nice. But on top of that, I have outside of that, I had a hard time really recognizing some elements that I need when I talk about motricity. Pre-reaching, for instance, in terms of anticipation is something that is really, really important, and I didn't hear about pre-reaching. Everybody knows what pre-reaching is. It's the idea that you adapt before you catch or grab an object to adjust your hand to the shape of the object. So you're going to catch like this if it's a long oblong object. If it's a ball, you're going to shape your hand like this. I think that this is an important element of the anticipation, and I don't see it in what you showed us. So maybe you can explain. I didn't hear the name Paillard, and I know that Paillard is behind a certain number of things, and some people that you quoted, but and you said a second part. Do you refer to Paillard? In regard to anticipation when approaching the target. So these are elements that I am missing, but yet again, I really like what you showed. So I would be even happier if you could address my questions. Thank you for that question. Paillard is really, really a name that appears in my dissertation, and I refer to his name. So it's on literature that is quite old. So so this is the theoretical framework for analysis. But the pre-reaching and the framing of the hand in view of the object to be grabbed. And the interpreter cannot hear Jacqueline because she's not having the microphone. So this is something that I was interested in before I conducted my research, but it was not possible for us to do that. The tasks were conducted on a graphic tablet to test the laws of motor anticipation, and we have 3 laws of motor control that were reproduced on a graphic tablet. And so these were works that were conducted with ASD children. So how to recognize the so these are studies that looked at whether there was a in that study they did not find. So the child was asked to recognize the right type of gesture for grasping. So some authors varied the context, and so in the interpreter did not hear the first part of the question and the first part of the answer. So sorry, but it is not possible to translate because we're a bit late, and this is absolutely not your fault. Thank you. Yeah, bravo, Aurélie.